Hello and welcome to the Invictus Racing League podcast, episode 6. My name is Gareth, and joining me, as ever, is my good friend Sab. Good evening, Sab.
Good evening. It's good to be here again. It's Thursday again. It seems to have come round quickly. We've had a good week of racing in Invictus. We've had the British Grand Prix since we last spoke on here, and many off-track drama. So it should be an interesting podcast tonight.
Yeah, it's gonna plenty of talking points tonight, guys. So stay tuned, and we will hopefully bring you some decent conversation. But if you are joining us this evening, of course, drop into the comments. We are streaming live on Twitch for the podcast, so you can drop your comments in. Equally, we are now on Podbean and on SoundCloud after the race. So if you can't join us live, make sure you follow the channels on Podbean and on SoundCloud. If you want to find those links, you can go to our Twitter page at InvictusRL, where it's got all the links for the extra podcasting sites, so you can listen to us outside of our live hours. So yeah, hopefully you can join us, whether it be live or whether it be over the weekend. Let us know where you're watching, how you're listening, and yeah, it's always good to be joining you. But for tonight, just to go through, as we usually do, the slight running order of what we're going to do tonight. We're going to start up with the British Grand Prix, of course, at Silverstone last weekend. Fantastic race, and you'll hear Sab and I's thoughts very, very shortly on that. A quick word on Sebastian Vettel, of course, another mistake we saw from this weekend, and we'll see, and we'll get into where Seb's going wrong, where Seb's going wrong,
Wow.
and of course we'll have a rant this evening, and unfortunately it is Williams' story and Rich Energy that's caught my eye over the last week and a half, and unfortunately I'm going to have to give a big old rant about Haas F1 and their dealings with Rich Energy. But yeah, starting on the British Grand Prix, Sab, what was your take on the race? What did you come away from the weekend thinking?
It was great. We spoke briefly early in the week about it, and we both agree it's probably the best race we've had this season. Austria was great, but this had so many good on-track battles, didn't it? With especially Leclerc being a highlight against Max Verstappen. He was told he needed to be a bit more aggressive to defend and attack these positions, and boy, did he show it. He looked great. Leclerc, I'd say, probably the standout guy. Safety car come in. It's been a while since we've seen a safety car in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton took full advantage of that, and you didn't really see much of him for the rest of the race. But overall, a great race to watch. It'd have been great to have been there. I unfortunately wasn't. But yeah, they put on a good show. The teams at the weekend.
Yeah, I'm putting it out there. I think it's the best race that we've seen in the turbo hybrid era. It was the battle between Max and Charles was, I think, on par with what we saw from Lewis and Nico in Bahrain in 2014, 15. Can't remember which one it was. But yeah, I think their battle was absolutely superb, and if that's what we're going to expect from those two, and I think what was quite nice as well is that obviously after we saw the two colliding and in Austria is that Charles said in the media that he was like, well, if that's how we're going to race, and then I'm quite happy to go and do it like that, and yeah, he stuck his elbows out as far as he could go, and I think Max kind of appreciated it, I had so much fun watching that race, and whether it just be, you had the two Mercs at the start of the race battling over each other, Valtteri making that unreal move back down the inside at
Oh
Cops,
yeah,
which was,
yeah,
it's good to see that he's still, although Lewis is starting to break that lead out in the championship, that Valtteri's still fighting with him, because Valtteri could have just let him go there and just think, oh,
yeah.
for God's sake, he's got past me, he made a decent move, but yeah, that was an absolute ripper of a move. But yeah, then we saw. I don't think we saw it on camera at the start, but you had Lando and Ricardo going side by side throughout the first two sectors, and only until they got to Beckett's they
Yeah.
actually break up. Which that was it was just, there was so much going on. Of course, you had the Hasses collecting each other, which is the same as what we saw in Barcelona. So, and we'll get on to Haas later with what's going on there. But yeah, it was the first race in a long time that I've watched, and although Austria was good because you had Max fighting through, this was the first race that I think there were several battles throughout the grid, not just kind of one that you were focusing on, that just kept you glued to the screen for the entirety.
Oh, definitely. One, from my point of view of being a McLaren fan, was the Carlos Sainz Dan Ricciardo for the last 12 laps. I was pretty much on the edge of my seat watching that, and it was absolutely fascinating to see what Carlos could produce to defend that. Dan always got the DRS on him, but Carlos knew exactly where to put the car and where to put the power down just to break that toe and just break it just enough so Dan couldn't try one of his famous dives down the inside. And Carlos, in the end, the victor and picking up P6, which is a super result for the team. Unlucky, you mentioned Lando earlier. Really, the safety car didn't benefit him, unfortunately. It proper screwed him out of a points playing position. He would have probably been up there with Carlos, I reckon, for points last weekend. Sorry, if he had to have had that safety car problem. But other than that, yeah, I think, like you say, not only at the front with Max and Charles and a few others, we had battles all the way through, which was great to see. I probably have to agree with you, it's easily up there, one of the best hybrid races we had in a long time. Yeah, you could sit here and we could spend an hour, couldn't we? Really, just not even talking about the race. We talk about the whole weekend, how good it was. It was one of the best British Grand Prix we've had in a very long time. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking at the end of the last episode that I said that Silverstone's not my favourite, and I wasn't a massive fan that he's been given a contract till 2024. But yeah, that it goes and shows me and produces one of the one of the best races that we've seen in F1 for several years. And yeah, like you said, Carlos's fight. I thought he was. I think they gave driver of the day to who was it? They gave it to
Charles.
it was Charles. Yeah, so it was Charles
Yeah,
of Max, but it was. But I think Carlos could have easily gone for it. I thought his defending from Daniel at the end was magnificent. But then equally. Like you said, with Lando, it was a shame for Lando because he was doing so well to start the session. But I do find it quite strange is that like they said, oh, the safety car just kind of screwed us. But he was before the pit lane when the safety car came out. So he could have come in, but I think that was because you could see he was trying to kind of hold his tongue at the end because I think he was slightly frustrated because he knew that they stayed out there on the wrong tyre when they should have come in pit because you saw the likes of the Renaults come in and after that you've just put yourself in the wrong position on track. But yeah, so I was slightly disappointed with McLaren, and I think they kind of messed up Lando's race there, and he obviously managed to come. Made a second stop, came out, finished the end of the race on softs, managed to get back to 11th, but couldn't quite catch up to Hulkenberg. Another one that had a decent race, I think, also and a decent quali was Alex Albon. He was
yes,
another driver that I think was kind of went under the radar, did very nicely, and then unfortunately he got caught with an electrical situation with his car. And I don't know if you've heard about what happened. Basically, the
no,
the the car stayed charged, so obviously they have a light just above the air intake. And it tells you when the car it goes green when it's good to touch and red when it's not when you can't touch it. I believe I think that's how it works.
yeah,
But his car stayed positively charged for the entire race. They couldn't pit stop it to change the tyres because as soon as
all
the
right,
the mechanics would have attached the wheel guns, they would have got an electrical shock. So he was stuck out there on a one stop on, I think he did the soft and mediums, and obviously the mediums weren't really going to run to the end, but somehow he managed to keep it in the top 10 until I think about 3 laps before the end of the race, and then unfortunately he dropped down to 12th over the last. They just really died in the last like 5 or so laps, so he dropped from 8th to 12th pretty quickly, but yeah, that was a real shame for Albon. I think he did a really decent job. But yeah, I think absolutely banging race. Really enjoyed it. Looking at Haas, obviously they had that incident at the start. Side by side, I've seen people say that you shouldn't fight side by side with a teammate into turn one, but I don't know. Look, if you look back at the incident, it's such minimal contact, and like the corner they've come out of is not exactly. I don't think Grosjean's exactly squeezed Kevin. I think Kevin's being a bit brave trying to run around the outside there. So I'd probably say it was more K-Mag's fault than Roman's. But I don't know. It's another bad race for Haas, isn't it?
Yeah, and the weekend didn't really start off well for them either, did it? Because they planned to revert the car back to the Australia spec, and not long after, Grosjean decided to crash in the pit lane, which we haven't seen for a very long time. And you just kind of looked at that moment and thought, is this going to be one of those weekends for Haas? And unfortunately for them, it was. It just nothing went really right for them, and it was just weekends to forget. Really, I would not like to have been in the same room as Gunter Steiner uh, after what had gone off. The swear jar definitely be out, I'm sure, especially with what we've seen on Netflix documentary. But yeah, I just don't know what to say with Haas. It's I don't know if things off track, what we'll allude to in a bit, is distracting them somewhat now, or they've just not got the right setup, the right chassis or anything, or I don't know. It's weird because this time last year they were really pushing Renault for that fourth spot, and you thought they were only going to get better from that. And me personally, I thought it was going to be between Renault, Haas, and McLaren this year for that fourth spot, and Haas have just fallen away so quickly now. It's quite embarrassing for them now.
Yeah, it's been a real struggle for them, and you feel sorry because obviously, as we allude to, they've got several off-track kind of distractions going on at the moment. But then equally on track, they don't know how to get the tyres working properly. They don't know how to get the aero functioning. And obviously, you know, like you said, the Grosjean went back to his Australia spec car, whilst K-Mag was sticking with the most recent one, and obviously didn't work in qualifying at all for both of them, and then to have that incident in the first lap and the third, fourth corner of the race, and retires both cars. So that's a complete race weekend scrapped because there's no data about if how the cars are actually performing in race scenarios. So you can imagine. I mean, I think it was Andrew Benson at the BBC F1. It was saying that when they spoke to Gunther Steiner afterwards, that it was the first time that he's properly seen him angry, and that Steiner usually is quite good at holding back his feelings when it comes to speaking to the media. But you could really tell that he was seething, and that he said that he didn't need to have a long conversation with the drivers, and it would he'd tell them exactly what I thought. And yeah, he's not a guy that I'd probably want to have a one-to-one meeting with when he's not particularly happy. And
Definitely not.
yeah, he's it's you don't quite understand what's going on at Haas because they were getting support off Ferrari. They've got in theory a good chassis. The season just seems to be falling apart, and so yeah, it is disappointing. But I mean, the main part of the race was the fact that Lewis breaks the record, sixth all-time victory, or sixth victory at Silverstone, all-time record now, beat Jim Clark for home wins. So 6 times at the same track, amazing record for him. And
Yeah.
although in the early stages he was behind Valtteri, I don't know about you, but I thought regardless he had so much more pace that I think he could have just turned it on and overtaken Valtteri at any time. He was unbeatable this weekend when it came to the race.
Yeah, definitely. And they always say you have that 2 or 3 tenths advantage in your home race, don't they, normally? And what amazed me the most was Lewis at the end getting that fastest lap in on those really old tyres. And even, I think I don't know if I'm right in saying, the team wanted to pit him in again to just to save his tyres, but he kept staying out and staying out, and he ended up doing that fast lap. And I'm sure that fastest lap was faster than what Williams did in qualifying, which is just phenomenal, really, on really worn tyres. Lewis is the king of Silverstone. Whether you love him or you hate him, he's the king of Silverstone. He knows how to go well around that circuit, and he gets out in front. 9 times out of 10, he will probably win the race. Another record I'd like to just bring up. What happened this weekend was a new world record, fastest lap by Red Bull. That was, I don't know if you've seen it. It was and 1.9 second, I think it was, pit stop. Blink and you'll miss it, so to speak. They really pulled it out of the bag this weekend, Red Bull, and they did also previously with Max when he was against Charles in the pit lane, and that wasn't a bad pit stop either. I'm sure that was a handy 2 seconds as well. So Red Bull really nailed their pit stops this weekend.
Yeah, it's been Williams that have been kind of the champions of the pit stop. But yeah, Red Bull absolutely smashed it. They were the ones when we originally came to these lightning fast pit stops. They were the ones that kind of always took the lead and managed to come away with the fastest times. Yeah, that was unreal. 1.91 second pit stop, and the fact that you can change four wheels in that time just shows the dedication,
Yeah.
like the practice that these guys go into, and like just sheer precision. So yeah, absolutely hats off to Red Bull and their pit crew for fantastic world record there. And just looking back at the Max and Charles fight, and I said earlier that I think it's the best that we've seen since the duel in the desert between Nico and Lewis. Where does it rank for you? What if you look back through battles that you've watched personally in F1? Where does that? Because I think that's up there with some of the very best.
I probably have to agree with you. Yeah, in this era, definitely. I remember this last weekend that move Charles did in club corner on Max. I think caught Max out by surprise to send it up the inside like that and get his nose in, and somehow they might have just banged wheels slightly, but somehow come out of it, both of them not with any damage, and Charles to get back out in front. That was a phenomenal move. That I did not. I don't know about you. I did not expect him to make that move. I thought Max had got the move done. He was just going to follow him round and then probably wait for DRS down Wellington Straight and try and get him there. But yeah, it was good to see that he took note of what happened in Austria, because I imagine that would have frustrated the hell out of him. He thought he had that race win in his hands, and it was taken away from him. Like, so for him to then decide to step up and really give it back to Max as hard as Max has been giving it is super battle. Neither were ever going to give up, and that's how racing should be, shouldn't it? That's what we want in Formula One, the close, hard racing. Neither of them were ever dirty, neither of them were ever going to run each other off the track. They were just committed to getting past each other, and yeah, superb battle. It was a shame in the end what happened with Max, because I'm sure that battle could have carried on throughout the rest of the race.
Yeah, yeah, and I had so much fun watching it, and of course he made that unreal overtake at the Village around the outside of Pierre Gasly as well, which I think is a massively understated move, very very difficult to do. But as you was just saying there with the incident with Max, and we'll move on to our next point on the list, and it's the Vettel, obviously 100% Vettel's fault, or
Yes.
you, yeah, I it has to be. I mean,
Yes.
what's your opinion on it? Because I think is it like a category of errors now? Is it something that's going on in Seb's head? Is it just random mistakes, but it all just seems to be happening to the same person? But where's this coming from?
It's tough, isn't it? The only thing I can guess is this year's car just doesn't suit him, and he's trying harder than normal to push the limit of it, and it's just not working for him. The car's not sitting right, and he's not getting the right grip through the corners, stuff like that. I just think, yeah, because the car doesn't suit his style, he's trying too hard then to make the car work for him, and that's probably where the mistakes come. 'Cause Seb, Seb is not a bad racing driver. He's a four-time world champion. He's a four-time world champion for a very good reason. He's got a mistake in him. A lot of drivers do, but the problem is this season, because I think there's been a real catalogue of errors coming round, and like a spin in Bahrain, for example, which was out of the blue, and this accident this weekend. I just think because you're in a team as well like Ferrari, and because you're a big name like Sebastian Vettel, it's going to always be highlighted a lot more. Especially you driving for a team like Ferrari, they always want to be the very best at the very front of the grid. So to see as well we said, to see Charles doing well in that car and getting arguably at the minute better performance out of it. It must be frustrating, Seb, because clearly, I don't know, he just can't find the right rhythm with the car or what, I don't know, but clearly it's all getting to his head by the looks of it now, because it just seems to be frustrating. I read many rumours about him retiring. surely see Seb retire at the end of the season. He's a racer at heart. He loves racing. I just think this is one of those seasons where you could just probably write it off and forget it and try and focus on next year. For me, I just think it's just the car's not sitting with him and he's trying too hard and all these errors are just blowing up in his faces because it's who he is and who he drives for. I don't know what your opinion on it is.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because it seems to be that he just gets flustered under pressure. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It's very easy to for us sitting at home to kind of look at a driver and say, "Oh, he's struggling." But I mean, you look at the ever since the crash that he had in Germany when he was leading, he's had incidents where he obviously had that he held up Carlos Sainz in Austria, got a grid penalty there that cost him for that race. You had what last season you had his collision with Max in Japan. He had the spin with Lewis at Italy. He's had the spin in Bahrain this season. Like there's been a litany of errors that he's made, and the problem is that Charles isn't. Charles made what a few at the start of the season. Of course, he made that big error in Baku where he hit the water castle section.
Yeah.
But Charles has consistently over the last few races been in the top three. He's been on the podium for the last few races. He is turning out to be much quicker in qualifying. Although Seb seems to have that sort of well, Charles seems to have consistently fast pace, whereas Seb seems to have that sort of like every now and then he'll pull out a lightning lap, which I think he's done, and he's still
Yeah.
got it in him. But I think, yeah, problem with that Seb's got at the moment is they said at the start of the season that Sebastian is our number one driver, and they laid that out. And whether we agreed with it or not, that was Ferrari's prerogative. They were going to put everything behind Seb, and they saw Charles as Seb's successor, but not this season. But as the season goes on, and Seb makes these errors, like we've seen in the last few races, he's going to lose that status, and Charles going to start. They're going to start focusing on Charles, and I mean Ferrari are way off in the constructors' championship now. That like it is done for them essentially. It's very unlikely that they're going to make up the points difference that they've got now. It's what 160 points or so they're behind Mercedes in the constructors, and then equally in the drivers, I think Lewis is exactly 100 ahead of Seb and 103 ahead of Charles. So it's the Ferrari drivers battling out over fourth and fifth in the drivers at the moment, and the fact that they're being beaten by Max, who he's got a win to his name, which is better than the two Ferraris have got, but equally, in theory, in a slower car, because although the Honda has been very good and surprisingly good this season, of course, I don't think we were expecting to see the Red Bull kind of be much faster. I think the Red Bull stuck to the ground in Silverstone way better than the Ferrari did over the weekend. The overspeed that Max had over Charles in the first sector at Silverstone was crazy. He could take so much more speed through Abbey, and it was, yeah, I think Ferrari have got a big kind of decision to make, because although I'm not saying they should get rid of Seb, I've never thought that. I think he is a very, very good driver, but Charles is proving that he can stick up with there. He's been consistently decent for the last few races, and it would be a miss of Ferrari not to rethink this strategy and knock Seb down so that they're level drivers and saying, you know what, go against each other, let them fight, and see who is effectively the faster driver at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. I was just looking at the drivers' championship. Leclerc now is only 3 points behind Seb in the championship, which at the beginning of the season you probably wouldn't have said that would have happened. Seb usually Mr. Consistent in well in the previous years he was fighting for championships and stuff. And Leclerc coming into a new team, big team, it's you thought he might have took a while to settle, but like you say, he's come in and he's been very fast for a lot of the races this year. It's for me, would that would that really make Seb start looking elsewhere, if there is any elsewhere. If the team was to back him less and back Charles more, it's going to be really interesting to see because he's used to always being the number one guy, and then suddenly the new kid as such on the block coming in is now on even terms with a four-time world champion. He might find that a bit of a slap in the face, so to speak. Uh, it's gonna be interesting to see second half coming up to the second half of the season what Ferrari are going to do. Personally, I think they should just write this season off now. You described how far behind they are in the championship. They should just scrap this season completely off and focus on next year and try and fix what has gone wrong this year because this is a huge backward step compared to what they were doing last year. And if they don't start focusing on next year, they're only going to be struggling again like they are now. And it's just, I don't know what to, where, if Seb were to, there's a question for you. If Seb was to leave at the end of the season, where could he go? What options are available to him? Eddie Jordan, I don't know if you watched the Channel 4 coverage, Eddie Jordan kept spouting off Mercedes, but surely Lewis wouldn't swap places with Seb, not in a race-winning Mercedes, to go to the position of Ferrari in him, and it's a bit all bizarre. It's like you say that those crazy rumours start coming about, don't they, now this time of year, and you can start hearing all sorts.
Yeah, I mean, this is we get to like the midpoint in the season. It's like they start crazy season, don't they? Where you get all the rumours about the drivers, and I can't see Lewis and Seb swapping. I don't see the point of it. I think why would Lewis leave a dominant car at the moment? Although he said in the past that he'd like every Formula One driver dreams about racing for Ferrari, and understandably so. But why go to an institution at the moment that just seems like it's flawed? It's not
Yeah,
just the drivers at Ferrari that are struggling. You've got the strategy, and that seems to be completely random this season. Whether it's some races it's worked perfectly, some races it goes absolutely dreadfully. And I don't know if Seb leaves because the only place I can see him going is possibly back to Red Bull in replace of Gasly. But it's the same thing as what he had when he left originally. Is that he had a young upstart in Daniel Ricciardo challenging him, and he didn't like the fact that he was being challenged as the number one driver, which is why he left and went to Ferrari because he had Kimi Raikkonen as a teammate that he could kind of count on being a professional number two. Why would he go back to Red Bull? With Red Bull, have put pretty much all of their eggs in the basket of Max Verstappen as the future of
yeah,
their. And although Max has got that break in the contract, performance related for the end of this season, and people theorising that he might go to a Mercedes, I can't see that happening either. I think it would take a lot for Max to go to Mercedes because I don't know. I just think I can't see Mercedes wanting to upset Lewis. Although Lewis is coming somewhat towards the end of his career, I think he's definitely although he will say he isn't, he's definitely eyeing up Michael's 7 titles, and
yeah,
it is realistically possible. And I think with Max coming in, I think you'd almost go back to that sort of 2016 Nico and Lewis scenario where you've got two very fast drivers at the top of their game, and possibly with the history of Max, and although he's matured a lot in the last season, I don't know whether Lewis would find that slightly off-putting, and he's probably got quite a lot of swing. And then equally, he's been with Mercedes his entire career, so to make a jump to Ferrari would be huge. That would to break ties with Mercedes just for the sake of racing in red for a season or two. I think yeah, it's gonna be tricky for Seb. Of course, he's a very private man. He's got his family, and he's recently been married. And does he do a Nico? Does he just kind of he realizes that family kind of comes first, and we saw Nico
yeah.
won his world title and then retired, and Seb's of course he's already going to go down as a four-time champion. Does he just decide, you know, I don't need the grief that I'm getting off the media, and And does he still have the drive for it at the end of the season? So yeah, I mean he hasn't qualified in the top five since he got pole in the Canadian Grand Prix. So it's 3 races he hasn't been in the top, maybe even the top six. So yeah, a lot of thoughts for Seb to have for the rest of the season. I'd expect kind of there'll be the rumours will always circulate. We've seen plenty of rumours circulating today, whether it be Ocon replacing Grosjean at Haas, which I don't know. We were talking about this before we started. That I can't see that happening. I don't know what your thoughts
No,
on that, but and then equally we've
no.
heard about Kubica possibly not lasting the season and possibly Latifi coming in for him at Williams, which is theoretically more possible. Nicholas Latifi currently doing very nicely in F2. He's got a decent financial backing behind him, and of course Robert. He's been comfortably out qualified by George and beaten in the races as well. So yeah, silly season coming up. What would be a very random prediction of yours that we'd hear for like a rumor or a driver swap?
Well, funny, just before we came on there, one article I did read, um, again, this is just wild rumours, but the article headline was Ocon to race in Mercedes for 2020. So this article obviously alluded to the fact that he's set to replace Bottas at Mercedes next year. For me, it'd be harsh on Bottas, especially because he's improved a lot this season compared to last season. But I suppose they do need to find Ocon a seat. I don't know where else he could get a seat. He's a talented racer, Ocon. In my opinion, unfairly got ousted out at Force India at the time because of the new owners and owner's son getting preferential treatment. But we'll not go down that road. Um, Ocon, yeah, he's a fiery character. He probably might upset Lewis a bit more because Bottas seems to be good at taking orders. But what's your opinion on that? It's interesting to think if Ocon was in that car, I don't think he'd quite be the yes sir kind of character if he was battling Lewis and had to let him pass.
I think I was never massively impressed by Ocon. I thought he was a good driver, but I think he's probably at the same sort of level as Valtteri. I don't think he's going to go in there and kind of set the world on fire. I think he's a little bit. I don't know. He made a lot of silly errors at what was then Force India. He got under the skin of his teammate, which although he probably wouldn't do it when he was in his home manufacture, I just I don't know whether the safer bet would be to go for George Russell and look to the future. And although, like, I'm sure people will say we're biased because we're British and obviously George is, but he's a consummate professional. He does the best that he can with what Williams are giving him, and you can see how much time that he's getting out of that car compared to Kubica. And of course, Kubica had the injury, which is possibly causing him to lose some time. But George is finding that time. He's having races where when he is able to race against other cars, and that is rare, but we saw him make overtakes in Austria, and we saw him hold up drivers very nicely in Monaco. So yeah, Valtteri's doing very nicely this season, and it would be harsh to see Esteban in there. I'd prefer to probably see him. I'd like to see him back on the grid because you like to see the best drivers on track, and unfortunately, as F1 has been and probably will always be, you always have pay drivers and you always have the likes of
Yeah.
Lance Stroll and on the grid, and unfortunately that then squeezes the gaps for everyone else to kind of fit into. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting decision for Mercedes in the next season or two whether they look at George as a potential successor to Lewis, or if they think Esteban is, because both relatively, or Esteban relatively young, George quite like very young. Who's more likely? Because we'll be in the new regulations by then. Who's more likely to bring them more championships?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's just the same old problem recently, isn't it? There's too many good drivers and not enough cars out there for everyone to get a seat. It's unfortunate at the minute for Esteban. Me personally, I do like him. I think that third place, I think it was third place qualifying he got in Belgium when it was a mixture of conditions, shown what he can do. Yeah, he's had uh, well documented mistakes and battles with Perez, but someone like him for me should never be off the grid. He should at least find a seat somewhere, even if it's at Williams and George Russell then moves up to Mercedes. Who knows? But shall we move on to what I am really looking forward to is the rich debate. What alluding to earlier, and let you lead with it. Shall we? Let's hear your thoughts on everything what's gone off recently, especially today.
So yeah, if you're not aware, guys, Rich Energy, the company that were, or no longer company, that were title sponsors of Haas F1 team, embroiled in huge controversy over the weekend. Several defaming tweets, not only against the team that they were sponsoring, but partners. We've had subsequent legal issues over the last few days. Of course, they lost a case against White Bikes about their logo. Were duty bound to pay White £35,000 in costs. They're yet to pay that. Yet somehow are claiming that William Story had a £35 million war chest that he was due to pay Haas. So uh, right, well, I don't know where to start with this because there's so many different avenues you can go down. I think it's embarrassing for Rich Energy. I think William Story, he seems to model the Donald Trump like kind of persona on Twitter, where he just demeans and makes very kind of evasive comments and equally divisive. I think it's embarrassing for Haas because they've obviously gone into a situation where they've got themselves a sponsor which they've not really looked into, because the finances behind Rich Energy are very, very sketchy indeed. I think they obviously kind of saw this opportunity at getting a title sponsor and kind of grabbed it by the horns, you should say, with as Rich Energy like to tweet out, and but then equally, I think it's embarrassing for F1. I think why haven't F1 got a system in the way that the FA have, or and at least the Football League, where you see prospective chairmen and owners of football teams have to go through the fit and proper test. And although that's somewhat broken in football, how is that not the same in Formula One? How can someone come into Formula One like Rich Energy have, with no real explanation of their financial dealings, and then you get all of this that's causing absolute chaos on the grid? You've essentially last weekend, all the journalists wanted to know was what was going on at Rich Energy, and of course they don't. Well, firstly, they probably don't even know themselves, because these tweets seem to come out of absolutely nothing and are completely random, and they could be off. And there were so many people, especially on social media, saying, "Oh, I can't. This must be a parody account. This has to be fake," like, and not believing what's going on. Now, that isn't true, because any company that had a Twitter page with as many followers as the Rich Energy one does, although it's not verified, if a company like that was making all of these spurious and very defamatory comments against other people, other teams, they would have shut it down, and they would have got lawyers. So it's obviously coming, and then it's, I mean, it's not proven, but it's obviously coming from the fingertips of William Story, who is, and we've said before, I said I don't want to get into name calling, and it's unfair of me. I don't know him personally, unfortunately,
No.
I should say, but he's just coming across as a little bit of a sociopath at the moment. it's just you go through their feed and it just seems to be all over the place. I mean, he tweets out supposed legal documents. He tweets out today's one was a dig at Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. They've subsequently in the last 2 days been sued by Red Bull for defamatory comments against Red Bull, and then equally using hashtags as part of their promotion that use Red Bull in it, which is I'm not quite sure how. I'll be interested to see, and that because that's not quite as set in stone as the logo was compared to White Bikes, because of course it's just a hashtag can be used by anyone. So whether they can kind of worm their way out of that one, I'm not sure. But of course we've seen them release a new logo today that came out today, which is exactly the same as the old logo, but they've just removed the point at the bottom end of it, which nice and creative. They've changed the company name has now been changed over to Volt, or Lightning Volt, I should say, and that equally is an energy drink in America, so they're going to have to. Obviously, they haven't thought about that one at all, and even if you look through the papers behind this company insolvency and how they've kind of liquidated their assets to fold this into making Lightning Volt a thing, it's gone through a company that are incredibly shady, that essentially deal with companies that are bankrupt. So he's trying to get out of paying this settlement to Haas by claiming, or by essentially getting rid of Rich Energy and making it its own thing. All the while, you've got Haas F1 having to display the black and gold of a company that is on Twitter during a race making derogatory comments about the drivers and how the team's performing. I mean, it's mad. I don't. I'm sure you've got some good thoughts on it as well. But the whole situation is bad marketing on every level. This is bad marketing. If you're Rich Energy, this is dreadful marketing. Even if you think all publicity is good publicity, wrong. Because all you've got is if you want to get your name out there, if you want to cause chaos his original when they said they're sacking the contract with Haas, that's not how contracts work. He was like, oh, it's performance based, just after Kevin Magnussen had qualified 5th in Austria, so that's complete rubbish. And but then equally he said, oh, it's the politics and the political correctness in F1, and it's like, of course you're in an FIA accredited and affiliated competition. You're going to have to watch what you say and watch what you do, because that's how it works. You can't just go off and do what you say. And so what you've done now is your marketing doesn't work, because whenever someone searches for Rich Energy and for William Story, they're going to come up with all of these stories about how crazy you've been. Like, how can they sponsor another team or anything else? Because they supposedly sponsored some TT racing. How can any team look to think that that's a viable sponsorship opportunity when they see that not only does the so-called CEO of the company make all of these spurious claims, but he openly criticizes the team's performances? I mean, it's just bad PR, it's bad marketing, it's a real sour note for Formula One at the moment.
It is. You hit the nail on the head with how they're bad mouthing their own teams. One highlight for me, you'll have seen it, but I think the majority of people have seen it, was the photoshopped a milk float with the Haas colours on it and William Story driving it, and said something along the lines of, "You're looking quick out there today, guys," or something like that. Have you ever known a company in Formula One or a company in any sport publicly slate and bad mouth the team or person they're sponsoring or supposed to be backing? It's absurd what they're doing. I don't understand why a company would want to start up sponsoring somebody and then halfway through the season just decide, you know what, these guys are rubbish. We're supposed to be beating Red Bull. We're not. Let's just put a load of hate online. And let's be realistic. He clearly knows nothing about, well, the company knows nothing about Formula One if they're thinking they were going to come into this season and be beating Red Bull. Do you know what I mean? Not many teams. There's only Mercedes and Ferrari in the recent years who have beat Red Bull. And it makes absolutely no sense everything what they are doing right now. Like that one thing what made me laugh a lot is what you brought up is the logo. It's like they've gone on paint on a computer and just chopped the bottom end of the logo off and said, right, that'll do. I don't. It's like a 7-year-old at school is, like you say, like, got a parody account. It's just messing about. I don't know if you've seen, but somebody has already made a parody account of Lightning Volt, and they are making no end of jokes at Rich Energy expense. And they say this now, because of the way they've acted on social media and everywhere else, people are not going to take them seriously anymore, are they? You say, why would people want to be sponsored by these guys? I bet you Williams are very, very glad they didn't take them up on the offer because they were originally the team that was going to get sponsored by them, wasn't they? So, yeah, I'll be honest, I can't wait for them to just be gone from the sport. Haas are having a tough enough season and they don't need their main title sponsor acting childish like this because it must be highly embarrassing for everybody who works there. What if you're an engineer or somebody who cooks for the team? What are you supposed to say to family and friends if you say, I work for Haas F1? Oh, you're the team with that dodgy sponsor on them, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? It's all spiraling way out of control, and I just completely feel sorry for Haas. They've got too many issues, and they don't need Rich Energy to keep doing what they're doing. Oh, well, Lightning Volt now is what they're known as. Keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing for them, for the team, for Formula One, and I don't know. I feel so. Like I said last week, Gene Haas is no saint. He's had his own issues with finances in the past, but to go into a contract with Williams' story that it just seems it's just all very strange. He tweeted out his or supposedly his lawyers telling Haas that the contract is now null and void, and that Williams' story is willing to pay off the Haas, but then it was a 35 million supposedly breakup sort of clause, which they don't have that money, and they've never proved they've got this money. They've never, of course, there's the joke that you can't find their product anywhere, and
I have a can.
and where did you get your can from?
I got it in Australia. A friend of mine who works in the media in Australia, I said to him, I've never seen a Rich Energy can. Can you get me one? And he came back to me the next day and he said he just popped into the Haas hospitality and they had a fridge load of them.
So
And he brought me one out.
so they're only really supplying it directly to the Haas F1 like hospitality unit. But then, I mean, it's the whole thing is a farce. So I don't think Haas are probably going to see this money again, which is luckily for them. They're not in the same sort of situation as Williams, where it could really have knocked Williams possibly out of Formula One until they had a title sponsor of their own. But I think it's one of those. It's just a really poor situation for Haas to have got themselves in. But then equally, it just shows a lack of class from him, really, in the way that he talks and the way that he acts, and putting things like legal documents online, and it's just, I don't know. I'm not privy. I'm sure that I could do a lot more reading on it than what I have already, and I'm actually kind of planning on doing that and doing a little bit of a writing piece on it, but. There's a lot going on at Haas F1 and not a lot of it is good currently. But we'll stick with that for now because I'm sure by the time that Germany rolls around that we would have plenty more and hopefully some of it will be a little bit more positive than it is now. And we'll quickly roll on to actual our league. So if you are new to us and you're listening to the first time, we are Invictus Racing League. This is the Invictus Racing League F1 podcast. Sab and I are drivers in this PS4 esports league. We race on F1 2019 and GT Sport, and we've had our pre-season in F1 2019. We had our second race of pre-season or second and final race, I should say, and then obviously we start the calendar next week in Austria, and we started off the week on Monday, of course, and that's our no assist league. So all drivers running no assists, and it was a really good race, don't you think? It was a fun one that was eventually won by LR Archie, who was very impressive in the Renault. And then we saw the likes of Scopefielder, Sam, and Charlie have a fantastic battle over second, third, and fourth.
Yeah, Scopefielder up there again. LR as we know, see if you can look back on Mexico when he made his debut in this league, he was super fast that day as well, and he proves that he's one to beat in Mexico. He definitely looked good. The battle for second, third, and fourth was also great. The big surprise for me was obviously Boy Better Know. He just had a really tough evening. He didn't qualify well. I think he qualified ninth. I think he ended up qualifying and then eventually crashing out towards the end of the race. So tough one for the reigning champion, but I'm sure knowing him, he'll definitely bounce back, and we'll see him back near the front or at the front of the grid come Austria.
Yep, next week in Austria is going to be really exciting. A lot of talent on the grid, so make sure you tune in on Monday nights, 8 p.m. with Sab and I for that one. So that will be really, really fun to see. And we've got the likes of Speed Queen 80. She had a poor race as well. And like you said, Scott, Boy Band OSB, he's going to be fighting back, reigning champion, of course. So on to Tuesday nights, and it's realistic performance. And Sab, do you want to talk us through how realistic performance went?
Yes, bear with me. Right, so Sky Z ended up winning. We had a safety car during this race, which eventually saw me leading the pack. And all I can say is, like I said at the night, if you have seen the film Finding Dory, when the shark appears up behind them, that is pretty much what my view was. I was on the hard tyres with Mr. Sky Z, Scopefielder, Scott, Archie, all behind me, weaving backwards and forwards to keep the tyres warm. And as soon as that safety car waved, it was like tea time for the sharks on the little hungry fish, and I didn't stand much chance. But performance-wise, it was a good race. Sky Z took the win. Scopefielder came in second, with Scott having a better race. That Boy Better Know having a better race that night, coming home in third. It was a challenging race. There's some very, very, very fast guys in this league. Both Mr. Sky Z and Scopefielder in the Haas. Constructors wise, they're gonna look like they're gonna dominate this league this season. But with the allocations to come out very soon, I cannot wait to see how this league unfolds in the first race.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, with the allocation, so Performance League, if you are new, guys, it's one run in realistic performance. So pre-season is done in equal. That lets the admins assess your pace, and then when it gets to the season, you are put each race you're put into a different car depending on your performance from the previous race. So of course, if you do better, you'll probably drop down into a slower car. If you have a bad race, you'll probably jump up into a faster car, relatively speaking. So it balances out the pace, because obviously you'll get a lot of faster drivers in slower cars, a lot of slower drivers in faster cars. So it makes the racing much closer, much more exciting to see these guys charge from the back in the slower machines. And that is on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. and you can join Malk and Tim for that on twitch.tv. So make sure you check that one out too. Wednesday nights is equal performance. 3 leagues in equal performance: F1, F2, and F3. And F1 was, of course, it's our fastest one of the equal performance leagues, and it was a pretty decent race. I've gone back and watched it, and it was very exciting to see what the F1 guys can do, because obviously they're where everyone wants to be. They're what The top level, the top standard are expecting, and it was Tamworth Fox that came out of the win there. He did very nicely indeed, ahead of Schofield and VSR Marquez's. So those three doing very nicely indeed, absolutely rapid around the track there. So yeah, a really fun one to watch in F1. A lot of drivers this season that are mega fast. You'll find them in the top 100 of TT a lot of the time. So make sure if you're looking for the fastest racing here at Invictus, it's F1 on Wednesday nights 8 p.m. and you can join Tim for that in the commentary box. Then down to F2, so the middle of the three leagues that we've got, and it was another really fun race. This time it was won by Aaron J. Spence, and Aaron J. Spence has just been promoted up to F1 as well. So unfortunately, I'll be left without a teammate. So yeah, congratulations to Aaron for that one. So yeah, it's he took the race win. It was a fantastic battle at the start between Partridge, Tony Y, and Warris Lander, I believe it was. So there was at least a 3 or a 4 car battle over the race, and then using a different strategy, Aaron was able to come back through the pack, started outside of the top 10, came through the pack and absolutely blitzed it. I think he won by around 6 seconds or so. So absolutely cracking race for Aaron. He's been moved up to F1. So in with the big boys. So it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on there. And then F3 is, of course, your league, Sab. So how did F3 go for you?
F3, it was pretty exciting league. We had Shabs in his Mercedes take pole position. He qualified on the soft tyre quite convincingly in the end. We had Nitrogash in his Haas come out second place, but in qualifying with who else was with Ferocious Dan in third. Myself, I qualified in fifth on the medium tyre, opting for a longer strategy. It was a good race. I got a good run early on. Me and Ferocious Dan had a good battle at the front of the circuit. I kept trying to do the undercut on him, and I'd have a few laps in front of him, and he'd eventually beat me to the race victory. I came home in second with Luke Bailey, who didn't unfortunately get to qualify yet to start at the back of the grid because he was late doing the game update. So Luke came from the back to come home in third. Shabs, unluckily for him, ended up DNFing early on. I didn't quite see what happened, but he DNF'd early on, which was unlucky for him, with DMAC also DNFing, and we had from Richard and Nitrogash rounding out the top 5. But yeah, it's looking quite good in F3 at the minute. There's a lot of people around the top 5 who are pretty similar pace, so we should have an exciting league on our hands this season.
Yeah, going to be a really good one. F3 is one of the most exciting leagues you'll find anywhere, so I definitely encourage you to watch that one. And if you want to watch F2, it's Energy Dan that commentates on that one. F2, 8 p.m. on 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it's Malk, the voice of Invictus, that commentates on Wednesday nights, 8 p.m. for F3. So all the stream details can be found on our social media channels, so make sure you go and check them out. I'll give the links out to them at the end of the stream. So congratulations to all the race winners, and just looking down through the matrix of where everyone qualified, it was a pretty nice split. In fact, it's the all leagues, they seem to be split into their relevant sections. All the top 8 in F1 qualified the fastest. Then you go down to F2, and that's where you get a whole gaggle of F2 cars, and then the F3 guys just underneath the guys that were inside the top, just outside the top 10 in F2. So qualifying was seems to have been very balanced across all 3 leagues. So yeah, if you are interested, you can go to our sign up page on the website, invictusracingleague.com. Get yourself on the grid. There's plenty of spaces left on every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Equally, we run GT Sport on a Thursday, so if you're interested in that one as well, go to the website and check it out. So as we come towards the end of the podcast, it's time for Sab's favourite time, and it's the hot lap question.
Yes.
And the hot lap question, of course, is I'll give Sab 1 minute to I'll give him a question about Formula One, whether it be his a historical fact, an opinion piece, it could be anything. He has to give me the answer and explain his answer. He gets 1 minute to do so. And so this week, I've decided to go for a slight opinion piece from you, and it's quite an interesting. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on this, and it's one that
Oh
a lot
no.
of people tend to ask actually. And it's, if you could bring back any constructor from the history of Formula One, you can bring back any team, put them on the F1 grid from this season, moving forward. Who is it and why?
Wow. Um. Yeah. Wow. You've really you've got me there. Well, if you're gonna go for the crazy and the bit of unpredictable, like we were talking about Rich Energy, you could say Jordan, because them two mix very well. But I'll go with Lotus. Even though I know Haas have got the famous black and gold colours, Lotus I always know as the black and gold team, and they've had some many famous racing drivers. It'd be great to see Lotus back on the grid. So I'm going to say Lotus.
Not a bad answer there. There's plenty. I think growing up through the 90s, and I've seen plenty of teams. There's the likes of Tyrrell that would be nice to see back on the grid, and then of course Jordan would be another fun one. That was always an interesting interesting colour scheme on their cars, but then equally back through the years you've got plenty of absolutely iconic cars. I'd love to see a Van Wall Wolf, and yeah, some of the really decent ones we saw in the 80s or 70s and 80s. But yeah, Lotus, good shout, not a bad one at all.
Thank you.
So we'll come to the end, guys. So you've joined us for the 6th episode of the Invictus F1 podcast. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully you'll join us in 2 weeks' time. We're not here next Thursday. Unfortunately, Sab's decided to leave us for a week and
Yes.
selfishly take some time off. So
I'm going to go hunt for some Rich Energy.
well, if you find it, you'd probably be you're probably the only person with a can on the planet at the moment. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. If you are interested in joining the league, of course we are a PS4 esports league, and you can go to the website invictusracingleague.com, go to the sign up page, get yourself on the grid for this season. The calendar starts next week in Austria. And equally, if you want to check out all of our socials, it's at InvictusRL on Twitter and Instagram, Invictus Racing League on Facebook. Equally, we're starting up, hopefully, an F2 league in the next few weeks. So that is coming out. So if you're interested in joining the F2 league, make sure you let us know. We'll hopefully have more details for you in the coming weeks. So yeah, a lot going on in Invictus over the next few weeks, and it's going to get very exciting with the calendar starting, F2 possibly starting very shortly, and then GT Sport is going from strength to strength as well. So it's always good to see new members in the community. And equally, if as we said at the start, if you are listening to us live this evening, thanks for joining us. If you're listening back, of course, you can listen on SoundCloud and on Podbean. You can find those links on Twitter and at InvictusRL. Equally, if you want to donate to the league, you can go to the website at invictusracingleague.com. Go to the Invictus page, where you can find yourself a number of perks for donating to the league pertaining to being a community member. So yeah, all donations are gratefully appreciated. Go into making the league bigger and better. If you'd like to follow Sab and I on social media, you can go to at Alan Sabatino for Sab and at GT2_driving for myself. And Sab, as we round up this episode, have you got anything you want to say to everyone before we leave for a week? Have you got something you're looking forward to? With of course, we've got the German Grand Prix coming up next. What's coming up on the horizon for you?
I want to know what colour scheme Haas are going to be. I'm just absolutely, like you said earlier, I'm absolutely fascinated by how crazy the whole circus is around that team at the minute, and whether they're going to have lightning bolt written down the side of it or what. At the minute, for me, Yeah, McLaren are doing well. Selfishly, I can't wait to see if they can get more points, but I'd like to just see what on earth is going to happen next at Haas, personally, because every day you seem to look on social media and something new, what you didn't expect, happens. Like today with the Red Bull suing news. So yeah, I'm just for an entertaining point of view. That's what I'm looking forward to. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think Haas will be great. I'm looking forward to seeing what we see in the future from Charles Leclerc. I think he's gaining in confidence, and equally, I think, yeah, as you say, it's going to be interesting to see if McLaren can keep up this pace. So yeah, looking forward to Germany in 2 weeks' time. Should be an absolute cracker, and of course we've got a lot of we've got the summer break coming up. So a silly season will be starting. We'll hear plenty of rumours spreading around, and yeah, just like to quickly say as well, congratulations to David Tanitsa being drafted first in the F1 esports league last night for Ferrari. So Tonix is actually a driver that I commentated on for another league as part of the Formula Europe Championship, their Champions League, and he's an incredibly fast driver. So congratulations to Tonix going number one to Ferrari. So I really imagine as an Italian would be absolutely delighted with that. So congratulations to him. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you in 2 weeks' time, Thursday 8 p.m. Make sure you join us here if you're watching live on twitch.tv. Equally, as I said, go to SoundCloud, go to Podbean, where you can type in Invictus Racing League and follow the channels to be notified. Of course, it doesn't cost you a penny to follow but you'll get that subscription. And equally, if you'd like to follow this channel that we're streaming on right now, you can click that subscribe button, and you can be notified when we go live with the No Assist Championships on Monday night and with the podcast on Thursday nights. But for this evening, this podcast, episode 6, we're all done and dusted. We're going off, and we're going to leave you to it. So thanks for joining us, guys, and we will see you later.